and welcome to Mangaroos. I'll be your host for this episode, Mark, and I am really excited to bring to you one of the best Christmas manga of all time. We'll see just how good it is as we go through the episode. It is a bold claim, but
long list of classic Christmas manga,
and it's only getting longer. I intend to back that claim up throughout the course of the next hour or so. But before we get into that, I'd like to introduce my merry companions. Why don't we start off with Alex?
Okay. I guess also known as Elf Number One. I'm Alex, and I will talk about manga with everyone. I don't know what else to say about myself. Ho, ho, ho. So you go, Jason.
Just call me Jingle Bell Jason, sliding down the chimney with hot manga takes to fill your stocking. Did we just
do you want to do that in a chimney where it's already kind of hot, or you're just up in the heat?
You know what? I'll get in whatever way I can.
So
a lot
many
of houses these
carcinogens.
days don't have chimneys.
It's true.
So sliding down the drain pipe? No, I guess I'd still be outside then. Well, I'll figure it out. The important part is the jingling.
And there's a lot of jingles tonight because we're going to be discussing Black Knight Parade.
Famously not about any jingles.
Famously not about... Well, there will be more jingles later on. We're going to talk about Volume 1. This is by the... Well, I want to say renowned mangaka or artist Hikaru Nakamura, who is very famous for putting out quite a few series over the years. Arakawa Under the Bridge was what first introduced me to her, and then Saint Young Men was definitely what made her stick in my mind. This is her current series out right now. It launched in 2016 on Young Jump, and then moved to Ultra Jump in 2019. It's still going out, 8 volumes and strong.
Oh, wow, it's still running.
It is still running to this day. And a movie was just released, less than a month ago, December 23rd. That was a Friday night, baby. And it's really been just the media push in Japan over these past month, a couple of weeks or so. It's just been intense. I had never really even heard of this manga until recently, because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to ignore.
I first heard of it because of the movie.
Yeah, the movie definitely, it's got the movie bump going on over here. But
and we should mention it's not an animated movie, right? It's actually a live-action adaptation.
It is a live-action adaptation, unlike some movies, Kimetsu no Yaiba, which can only be animated. But Black Knight Parade is most definitely a live-action.
Oh, movie. They're gonna find a way with Kimetsu that'll be live-action.
I just hope it doesn't go the way of Dragon.
For better or for
stage musical
worse.
yet for Kimetsu?
Well, I think everyone has to go through a journey when you do these IPs, right? It starts off with the manga, then you do the anime, and then you do the live stage
then you
action.
You stray.
Broadway. Spend some time underground, off Broadway for many years.
And then if you're Final Fantasy X, eventually you become a kabuki performance. So
I didn't know about that one.
That is the dream. The story follows Hino Miharu, who is a 22-year-old young man struggling to make it in the world. He missed out on...
Not a saint young man.
Not a saint young man, just a regular young man. Although there are flashes of brilliance and perhaps even greatness in Miharu, as Volume 1 points out many times along the way. And I picked that up the second time I read through it, by the way. There's a lot of foreshadowing, which is just really, really good. So the more you read it, the more you'll love it. And that's what we can say about this. He works at a convenience store, which is something we'll get into a little bit later. And then he, for lack of a better word, is scouted by...
scouted, yeah, I would say scouted.
Dark Santa on Christmas Eve. That's what we'll call him, Dark Santa Kunihito. And is...
No face, I guess, also.
There's literally no face at all. Not like Kaonashi in Spirited Away, but he gets spirited away to the North Pole.
It is like, Spirited Away.
In that respect, it's not an onsen. It's actually Santa's house, where there's factories and elves and a whole assortment of colorful characters that we'll get into a little bit later. But this humorous manga also delves into kind of the difficult questions of life about, what is purpose? Why are we here? And is Santa real or not? We'll get into all that and more in the next hour or so. But I'm just going to start...
Stay tuned to find out if Santa's real, kids. All the kids
Are we finally going to answer that once and for all?
Well,
are we going to reveal the truth?
It's in question 4, but you don't even have to get through Volume 1 to find out the answer to that. Santa is dead. But number 1...
No.
Spoiler alert.
I'm just gonna get to the questions right here. Jason, if you were Miharu, what would you do? Would you rather keep working the graveyard shift at a convenience store or be forced to work as one of Santa's little helpers for a certain number of years?
It's kind of crazy that I actually had to stop and think about this question because working at a convenience store seems pretty bad. But obviously, as we've seen, like getting abducted by a living Santa sack and then being transported to wherever this is taking place and being surrounded by a bunch of insane
I thought it said
people.
Greenland when he posts on Instagram. It geotags
it's
like
Greenland.
Yeah.
But like, is that what Greenland is really like? I mean, granted, I've never been to Greenland, so who knows what's going on over there. I think ultimately it comes down to it depends on the kombini. The particular kombini where Miharu works doesn't seem like the most.
Okay, sorry. Sidebar: have you guys ever lived in Nerima?
I've lived. I know we're not supposed to give out our locations, but I've lived pretty darn close. I know it well.
I mean, I've been there.
Okay. So just knowing what you know of the area, would you say that was an accurate?
Actually, now that you mention it, yeah, that does sort of factor.
Nerima it's the only one of the 23 wards whose its omiyage's best known product is onions.
That says all you need to know right there. It's a
stinky
place with a lot of layers.
Yeah, a lot of layers. I guess layers.
No, I don't know. This particular kombini does not seem like the most psychologically safe work environment. I like how his one coworker who's named Kaiser is just kind of
it's a kira name.
Super kira,
totally
and he just steals all the expired food, and then his manager is like ultra militant about how that's a crime and you have to throw it out in a dumpster. I don't know. It seems like a bummer. It's insane to think that for Miharu, this abduction seems to be like an overall upgrade for his life. But yeah, I guess the whole working with a bunch of crazy people to, ruin children's Christmases seems more fun than working at a kombini. I don't know. Alex, what do you think?
I would say I agree with that sentiment. I would rather work in the North Pole, simulating children being sad on Christmas rather than having to work a service job where you get people who are drunk in the middle of the night demanding things. Like in Volume 2, I don't know if you guys got to Volume 2, but there's actual footage of the Nerima convenience store, and it is what you might think happened because they dig in Volume 1, they do say that's where the elite people come from. But there's a reason why that's where the elite people come from that you don't see until Volume 2.
That's kind of interesting.
So
yeah, I gotta admit, I never got that far.
I live in a part of Tokyo it's not Nerima, it's close to it. It's got a share of people that probably went to his convenience store. So
it's a little rough and tumble.
Yeah, that's why I would say with confidence I'd rather be getting a good salary in the North Pole.
Yeah, Sanjuman. That's pretty. What is that? That's is that $3,000 basically a month?
Yeah, like a bit less, right? It's like it was like 2,700 or something.
Yeah, he's getting shafted on the exchange rate. But,
yeah.
Well, and he's getting
paid.
He
gets free rent. He gets free rent. So
free room and board, 3 meals a day. It's hard to argue with that. Okay. No, I see. It sounds like you're both married to this idea that being kidnapped is all right. You can deal with that. It's kind of a little bit of a, as they say in Japan, a black company. I don't think they say that anywhere else, but it would be considered a corporate environment that doesn't necessarily follow the rules of compliance set up by the Japanese government. Kind of forces you to do overtime and whatnot. These are the kind of companies that are fortunately going away. But this is apparently not one of the best ones around. But you both would, I mean, I'm actually with you on the same page here. I think it sounds like a new thing. Why not? Try it out.
I mean, if it was indefinitely, I don't know. But since we know from Volume 1 that there is a definite year period. It's like study abroad. Like you could
Jet.
just think of it as like, yeah, it's like going to Europe, finding yourself, going to the North Pole, finding yourself. Like,
It's basically like the JET program. You're surrounded by a bunch of insane people getting a decent enough salary, and at the what were you going to do with your life anyway?
exactly.
Oh, it's the perfect out of uni.
So does Jet also gauge how much crime you've done or how much bad
but actually,
naughtiness you've done? And then...
it doesn't. But when I was on the
Okay.
JET program, I actually was abducted by a living sack and then spit out in Kochi, where I lived and worked for 3 years. So that part is very similar.
Oh, that will do it for you. Okay, so the great part about this novel, or this graphic novel, manga, if you will, is not only the humor, but just kind of like this low fantasy world building that Nakamura Sensei does. So how familiar were you with Santa's often lesser known companions? I myself was born and raised in the United States. We don't have anyone other than Santa Claus and then the reindeer. I would be hard-pressed to name them all. And then Santa's little helpers, the elves. But other than that, there's not too much variety. Alex, were you familiar with any of these before you came into there?
So like, my father is from the nation of Italia.
The old world.
The old world, and they have a Christmas witch. I think the witch gives
That's
you
exciting.
the presents. I don't know. So I have to look up. I should have looked up the exact parameters of the witch. But when I was little and we went there, we saw witches instead of Santa Claus, like little figures of witches.
Just
and
witches
stuff.
everywhere.
Yeah, just witches. I mean, who wouldn't want a witch to fly by your house, I guess. But Santa, yeah, I knew about Santa, but I knew about Krampus just because, like, I don't know, like, I think it came up as, like, a concept before.
Ernest Scared
When
Stupid.
I was in, like, in middle
Central.
school or something, yeah.
Is Krampus in Ernest Scared Stupid?
I'm pretty sure that's what the entire movie is about.
I never knew that was a Christmas movie.
I did watch some Ernest ones, so maybe that was how I got it.
Know what I mean, Vern? No, I mean, I was a huge fan of do you remember that stop motion Rudolph Christmas special?
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
like that.
I mean,
yeah.
who could forget, right?
Yeah.
And there's Herbie the elf who wishes that he had become a dentist, which I strongly empathized with as a child who also wanted to become a dentist. That's a separate episode. We can get into that some other time. But no, I mean, Santa's always been kind of a solo act, right? There's the reindeer, but they're basically just his mode of transportation, and then a bunch of nameless elves, which, maybe made sense when the hot items on kids' wish lists were like blocks fashioned out of wood and straps of leather or whatever children used to play with. But I remember as a little kid, I always had trouble with the elf concept. Like, did they make my Nintendo 64 or whatever I got as a kid? Anyway.
They made your Keebler cookies if you were in the U.S., so...
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those things. I bet they're delicious. But no, these bunch of weirdos, especially Mr. Hat or whatever he's called, Boshi-san, just kind of a middle-aged man in a gigantic hat. Mm-hmm. Kind of wish I'd known about him. That probably would have been a source of amusement. But no, these are a bunch of new characters for me.
Oh, and out of all of Santa's little helpers that you meet in Volume 1, who would you say was your favorite? And it can be for any reason. Jason, did anyone stand out to you?
I have to admit that Shino's outfit seems extremely shiny. I kept noticing, like, certain... I hate to sound like a complete perv, but, like, I can't tell if she's drawn that way on purpose, but, like...
Probably.
The little shine spots on her apparently pleather outfit...
yeah, she is very shiny. I didn't notice,
very
actually.
shiny. But no, definitely my favorite was Boshi-san. I mean, that guy just seems to be having a good old time. He's completely well-adjusted to his station in life. And his little tiny versions of himself that poop out Nintendo 2DS components were quite fascinating. So yeah, I guess he seems like he'd be all right to hang out with. Everyone else,
man,
I don't know.
You stole mine. I was going to say Mr. Hat because of his position in the story. Because, like, Teppei is like the kind of rock that needs to be like more normal, and then Shino, being the girl, needs to be acceptably normal. Like she is like kind of loose cannon, but she still needs to be like okay to be with the main trio. And then the main Santa, who's running the operation, he needs to be still mysterious while he's zany. So like I feel like Mr. Hat is the one who can like go the craziest in this situation.
And Alex, in your life and throughout your work experience, and you don't have to limit this to your work experience, has there been anyone in your life who's been like a Mr. Hat to you?
Been like a bad boss, you mean? There's been some abusive people around, but
Oh no.
they did not wear the skin of a dead elf. I don't know.
Yeah, I forgot about that part. That does sort of change.
There are
doesn't
some
it?
lines that we just won't cross. Okay, well, let's get into a little bit deeper. So what you find out in Volume 1 is that basically Santa has died in this universe. I mean, it's low fantasy.
Pour one out.
Pour one out. They don't say when. We just know it was a long time ago. And what's left is Dark Santa only. So what the entire North Pole operation is about is punishing bad children. Children who
Yeah, they're
been
really
naughty.
zooming in on the bad kids aspect.
Really letting it just
So many
grind on
bad
in there.
but you know what? So before we started, I just quickly perused Hikaru Nakamura's like Wikipedia, and I saw that she had a child. So maybe
Like
that
recently?
Maybe her kids have been
let me
naughty.
see. Yeah, maybe she's got some
She
naughty
got the naughty kids.
of her own. Wait, let me see. She gave birth to her first child. Yeah, in 2011.
So this
That's
this
older than
mother
many of our
There's
listeners.
been a lot of years to be naughty, right? And now her daughter is in her teens, which is a very notoriously naughty time.
Someone's getting some lumps of coal. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
someone's getting lumps of coal. So I wonder if that has any. I mean, you guys having been blessed with little
Bundles of joy.
presents, bundles of joy. What do you think about naughty children?
Both of my children were presented to me in Christmas stockings, hung by the hearth.
That's how it's done.
Yeah, traditionally. That's a really interesting point, actually. Yeah, I will admit, and this probably, I don't know if this calls into question my parenting skills, but I may or may not have used the whole Santa's appearance at Christmas time as a kind of negotiation tactic with my children. When they aren't exactly performing up to my expectations, I may or may not have sort of said, if you continue on your current path, I'm not sure how Santa will feel about it.
It's a classic
So, yeah.
tool.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's kind of why Santa exists.
Oh, without question. Such a tool in the parenting tool belt. But I find that it only really works around December.
That's true. Yeah,
Really?
you try that in
You can't
May,
pull
and they're
that
like,
out
"Come on."
in
come on.
in July or something.
This is summer. Don't give me that shit. Like I just get
Children
that
can't
face.
think 7 months in advance.
Yeah, that's way.
That's
too
like a
far out.
significant percentage of their entire lifespan.
It is.
It's like
Maybe when
asking
they
me to
get
consider
older.
60 years from now. Actually, come to think of it, do they ever address sort of what happens to the good children now? Do they receive anything?
In
What's
Volume
going
1,
on?
no. So basically,
Okay.
when Miharu finally signs the contract, 'cause, after he goes to the North Pole, he's there for a couple of days. They move all his stuff up, even without him signing the employment contract. They just kind of assume that he's going to do it. Just come all this way. Why not? And then he's watching the intro video, a little bit of OJT on the job training, and then. They go through the first part where it's like, and here's what we do with the bad kids. We give them lumps of coal, which I think we're all familiar with. Or
We've
give
all
them
received a few of those.
the entrails of animals, which some of us have received.
I wasn't so familiar with that one.
Yeah, is that a thing?
Yeah,
That was
I mean,
quite
I
shocking.
think they did it in The Godfather, and there was an episode of Jackass where that also happened.
Godfather's one of the best Christmas movies.
It's one of the definitive Christmas movies of our time, or before our time, depending upon when you were born. And then also for the kids that are really bad, they kidnap them in a sack. It's kind of anthropomorphic because it's kind of like a sarlacc pit, but wrapped in leather. And they
You
take
know
you
what
to
it
the North Pole.
reminded me of, that sack? You know that weird big, what's it called, like Dorothy or something, the plant from Little Shop of Horrors?
Oh, yes.
What's that thing called?
Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis, that's the one. Yeah, the sack, strong resemblance to Rick Moranis. And you know, he quit acting
He
decades
did?
ago.
And
so
he's Canadian.
yeah.
Do you know him?
Oh yeah. I used to hang out with him all the time. Same street, you know, Main Street, middle of Canada. Runs from one end to the other.
Love that street.
It's a good street.
One of the top 5 streets in Canada, easily.
Well, speaking of Canada, I'm sure it's different in every Christmas, but Santa is by far the central figure in the Christmas story in the U.S. And I wonder.
What about that JC fella?
That's true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Well,
That's a relevant point. But I
Actually,
wanted.
there's one part in the manga where they refer to like a foreign guy with a beard, and
Did they
it
bring
was
that
sort
up?
of, yeah, it was sort of ambiguous. Which guy are we referring to here?
Okay, well, I mean, they definitely.
this author has dabbled in JC.
Oh, I would say full deep
Very
end.
dabbled.
I think
Young
that's
man.
more than a dabble.
Even Buddha appears in this volume.
And Buddha is hilarious at the end when he's like, burn it all down. It's great. No, I don't even like. I'm
Okay.
making you sad. I'm weighing you down. I don't even. I'm Buddha. I'm not into this. But just burn it all
We've gotten
down.
this far. I guess if we're talking about it, that was definitely my favorite part of the whole.
Yeah, that was a
Oh
good
my
part.
gosh,
That was a
yes.
good
that was the
part.
highlight. Anyway,
She knows how to write for Buddha. Oh, she's good. Okay.
Yeah.
let's give Buddha his own spin-off series.
But I was gonna ask you guys, like, at what age do you think that kids start to believe in Santa, or start to become aware of Santa? Because when I look at my own kids, I feel like they always kind of knew that Santa was going to come and bring them presents. I never really explained it. I guess it was just because it's Christmas. I'm like, oh, I got to get him something. Well, you always want to buy your kids presents as a parent, and oftentimes you have to stop yourself from buying stuff, because otherwise your house would be full of toys and your feet would die because you would be stepping on toys every second, and no one can live through that. So you have to restrain those present buying impulses to the big holidays: Christmas, birthdays, Flag
Arbor
Day,
Day.
Arbor Day, Guy Fawkes Day. Well, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
But what do you think it is? Do you think the kids just grow up believing in Santa?
Well,
all kids,
that's
or-
that's quite an open-ended question. I think kids want to believe that magic stuff is going on around them. You know, like the Tooth Fairy. That's an exciting thing, and it's one of those things where they just kind of. I think with Santa Claus in particular, you just kind of pick up on it. Like it's just in the air. Like I don't think I ever even explained the
It's in
concept.
the Coca-Cola commercials.
It's in the Coca-Cola commercials. You know, you see him in advertisements everywhere. I assume children talk to each other about it at school. I'm pretty sure I never specifically mentioned Santa, but somehow my kids are well aware of the concept. So it's just kind of inescapable, isn't it?
I think you hit on something. It's all around us. You don't even have to. I think it's difficult to pinpoint an exact time when you start to become conscious of this whole Christmas thing. But I think all of us, or many of us, I mean, it really depends on the person, can point to a specific experience where they realize that Santa no longer exists. For me, and I'll start by sharing my Santa story. And trigger warning: if this is not your cup of tea, you should probably stop listening now. But there was a time when I was 7 years old, and it was a time in my life when I was losing teeth, baby teeth, and the adult teeth were coming in. And at my house, we put those teeth under the pillow, and then when you woke up in the morning, the Tooth Fairy would have come to your room and visited and left you $1 under the pillow, and your tooth would be gone. When I later learned the price for a tooth replacement, it's about $1,000 under insurance. I realized I was getting a raw deal.
You found that out when you were 7?
No, I found it out when I was 38.
Okay.
after I broke a tooth.
Oh, okay.
But no, when at 7, I had just fallen asleep, and I was so excited that the Tooth Fairy was going to come, and I had put my tooth just right under my pillow, and I knew that the tooth fairy was just going to come in and bring me that dollar, and I could buy so much with a dollar. Way back in the early 90s, it was just the possibilities were limitless. It was before inflation, all these things. And then I was so excited that I just couldn't fall asleep. And then out of the corner of my eye, I could see my mother tiptoeing in through the door, and she had that dollar in her hand, and it was just outstretched, and you could tell she was up to something sneaky. And she just went quick like a ninja, and she stuffed the dollar under the pillow and felt for the tooth and grabbed it away, and something inside me died that night.
I think it was the tooth fairy that died, and she had to come and replace the tooth fairy because the tooth fairy was murdered.
It could very well be, but that's when I just stopped.
Okay.
Like the whole thing, just like the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, it all went out the window for me there. It just was no longer. And yeah, I played along because it means that you wouldn't get presents anymore. But just after that, I was just done. Did you guys have anything like that at all? Alex, what about you?
Like, my mom is too bad. She's not a good enough actor. So, like, as soon as I could recognize handwriting, I was always seeing, like, presents from Santa, not even trying to be a different handwriting, but exactly my mother's handwriting.
Just like all the rest.
And I was like, but it's fun. Like, this is all fun. So,
Double
like,
the
the
presents.
festivities. Yeah, the festivities are fun. Everything's fun. So, actually, like, nothing really died in me. Sorry, but
It was dead to begin
I thought it
with.
was more of like, you know, like a tradition thing. Like, people do things on certain days because it's a festivity or a tradition. I kind of took it more like that rather than there being like magic or not magic.
Yeah, it's just a metaphor. There's a little of Santa in all of us. We're all Santa at a given
Yeah.
point in our lives. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't remember. So the thing about like wanting to keep the charade alive, that resonates with me very strongly because I don't want this to be a spoken thing. I seem to recall like just exchanging furtive glances with my parents, like when my younger sister was still very much into the Santa thing. That kind of signaled to both sides that, yes, we understand the nature of this agreement. You are no longer subject to having to believe in this. However, you will continue to reap the benefits. So, you know, it was one of those situations where, like, I don't specifically have an event where I remember no longer, like, the day the magic died, right? But I do sort of remember being sort of suspicious about certain things, like, why is it that Santa never eats the entire cookie? Why is there always that one little bit left over? Why would he do that? But the thing that
Santa
really,
ate our cookies.
no, my Santa
Your
was
Santa was
apparently
hungry.
on a diet or just extremely full. But the thing for me was always the mall Santas. Like there were two malls that I would go to on a frequent basis as a kid. They both had Santas. They were clearly different dudes. And it was like, so then you get into the whole discussion of like, well, those aren't the real Santa.
Santa
those
multiverse?
Are Santa's, those are Santa's
Those
disciples.
are Santa's helpers. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
or
disciples.
whatever, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I just I didn't want to stop believing, but I definitely did at some point. Yeah. So it happens to all of us, I guess.
And life goes on. And in the Black Knight Parade, Santa is already dead and has been for a long time. And here's where I think it's going. I haven't read Beyond Volume 1, and I think Alex, you know more than I do.
I know where it's going.
Alex, how much have you read so far?
Well, I'm only on 3.
Okay.
Okay. It's pretty clear that that Dark Santa and his ilk are searching for a Red Santa, a new Red Santa.
A replacement.
A replacement. And it sounds like Miharu has a pretty good shot at he has the right
Being
stuff.
the main character of the story. So one thing that I noticed in the first book that I wrote down on my notes, like, because I kind of like take notes when I'm reading so that I forget, because I often forget things. And then later I came back to this note and I was like, is the mom sending him Christmas cards, except every year, except the year that his dad dies.
Was his dad
And his
Santa?
dad dies on Christmas.
Was his father Santa?
And I read that note back again, and I was
Did
like,
Santa die in a traffic accident?
Wait a
Is that
second,
what's
is
going on?
Miharu's dad Tim Allen?
it's the Santa. So that's when I was like, oh no, this is the Santa Claus. Yeah, it is a
Wow.
Oh, we
the
really
extended Santa
recognize-
universe.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it's a Santa-verse. Yeah, it's a Santa-verse.
I don't know. That would definitely be a more fun job than working
And
at
then
the
later,
company.
he says that his dad. I think was it the volume 1 that says that his dad is a logistics person, like a UPS driver. I don't
Yep.
know. Yeah.
Yep.
So he says that, and I'm like,
There's
yeah,
subtle
and I'm
hints
like,
all
there's a
throughout
lot
this.
of things like his
Interesting.
dad dying on Christmas, where not famously you're delivering packages in the middle of the night at that point. It's not. We're not making online purchases on Christmas night, and so I don't know. That got me like, okay.
That's
everything's
Nakamura working
lining
her
up.
magic.
Yeah.
That's some
Dropping
real
little
storytelling right there. Yeah, okay. Well, I kind of want to segue into a broader question. Do you think? Well, this manga right now it only exists as far as I know in Japanese. I don't think there's an English version. But do you think that this would work for other international markets, given the subject material, or do you think it's just the setting? The Lawson's jokes, I mean, the subtle puns, the twist, humor. Do you think it's too culturally specific for Japan? Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a specifically Japanese take on Christmas. Like there's so much, there's like really specific Japan culture stuff in here, like the little slices of cake that are sold in twos for couples because Christmas is this date thing. But even in the manga, it's like, well, it's such an old-fashioned thing. It's from the bubble era. Nobody does that anymore. But then there's this stuff about like contrasting, the kids in Japan who do play at Christmas time to like the kids who, like Shino's family is like very traditionally Buddhist, I guess, and like she's not allowed to celebrate Christmas. And there's just like a lot of stuff that.
Although I think that people outside of Japan can understand that too. Like,
Well, that
not
part's quite
being
relatable. Yeah,
Christian, so
Lots
it's like
of
kind of maybe you feel weird about
just the
bringing that in your house.
specifics.
Yeah.
Totally take your point. Yeah, of course. But so I was thinking about the question, and like, I think if it was anything other than a manga, it would be maybe a bridge too far. But I think people who are inclined to read a manga are already familiar enough with, and maybe interested enough in the peculiarities of the way Japan approaches things like Christmas, that I think it would actually be like a source of great interest. So I think it would actually be a point in the manga's favor, actually. But if it was a movie or a TV show or like something with a bigger budget that had to hit like a bigger
movie like now, there is a movie of it.
There is
that movie, I can predict with fair confidence and certainty that the movie will not be a big, huge hit outside of Japan.
We'll see. Alex, what do you think? Do you think this one has a snowball's chance outside of Japan?
I have a lot of similar feelings as Jason in that because it's manga, the manga reading international crowd is different. They know a lot more about Japan and they can understand a lot more about Japan. So therefore, I feel like it's not that huge a leap. Like I think a lot of people do know about KFC in Japan and its link to Christmas. So they would not be completely confused when they see Colonel Sanders appear.
But how many of these weebs that you're describing are familiar with like the sense of great comfort and sense of belonging that happens when Colonel Sanders embraces you?
Oh
See,
my God!
I see, the thing is that one time I tried to take Colonel Sanders pictures and it's just like the crowds were too big. I couldn't get close to him. He was dressed up as a Dragon Ball character, actually.
So
like,
wait, where was this?
Is this
it was
in
an
Nerima?
Ikebukuro. It was
It was at
an
EK Books. EK Books. Anything can happen at EK Books. Sunshine City, stay away. So here's my Colonel Sanders story. I lived in a small town outside way outside of Tokyo for years and years and years, and there was only a few stores inside this town, but one of those stores was a KFC or a Kentucky, as they say in Japan. And being new to Japan, not knowing much, I was extremely, extremely grateful to have a restaurant that I could trust and go. And I felt confident.
You trust the Colonel.
I trusted
taste
the
of
Colonel.
home.
A little taste of home. I felt confident going in, especially like when you first start to live here. It's a little bit daunting to go and just like pop up into a restaurant and start ordering, right?
Yeah,
but
Kentucky, you're from Kentucky City, right? In the great state of Kentucky.
I am from the bluegrass state. Have been all my life. I'm still there. I would have never left Lovell, and then to have that in Japan was so comforting. And then there was one night where, as you do when you're young, I had one drink too many, just like like Miharu at the beginning of the story.
And then you
right?
sought out the Colonel.
And I was walking home around Christmas. It was the Christmas season, and it was absolutely freezing, snow everywhere. And I looked out in the distance, and there was this white guy in front of a building, and I was like, who else could be in this town? And this is just some old white dude sitting out in the front. And then I had to go figure it out, and I walked closer, and it was Colonel Sanders, and someone had wrapped him in a Santa suit at Kentucky.
The sheer nerve.
But it was amazing. I felt the sense of kinship and oneness with the Santa.
Were you also wearing a Santa suit at the time?
No, but I should have been. I was wearing gloves and a warm jacket, so we had that in common. So it is real. I think there are KFCs across the country in Japan with Colonel Sanders stationed outside.
Yeah, they don't only dress them up as Dragon Ball characters.
It's not just Dragon Ball characters. No, I think they do. I think they do the Santa thing. So I think that's a little bit of a cultural gag that's in there, buried.
It is still. I was wondering if it's still a prevalent thing, right? The whole Kentucky Fried Chicken on Christmas thing, and
it is. The
is.
Kentucky
I was
Fried
out and
Chicken
about.
near me had like giant signs on it, being like, "Don't come here without like reserving your chicken. Like we're
ain't got no chickens left.
Yeah,
Stop ordering the chicken.
You really do have to order days in advance, though. Like you actually, and there are lineups out the door. Anyway,
And it is
incredible
delicious.
stuff.
It's hard to go wrong with Kentucky Fried Chicken on Christmas.
It's finger looking good. This episode
was in
brought to you by
Okinawa for
Kentucky
Christmas,
Fried Chicken.
so I had a soki soba on Christmas.
Oh no,
Soki soap.
we all have our own traditions.
Yeah.
It's true. Traditions are where you find them. Speaking of traditions, I wanted to ask you a question. So, going back to Christmas, one thing that you really get into in the latter half of Volume 1 is how these people who are working for Kunihito, the Dark Santa, their job is to gauge just how bad these bad kids have been, and then assign them a certain present or punishment based on just how naughty they've been. And what we find is that Miharu has got a killer talent for finding out just the right amount of disappointment to deliver to each child, to just give them their just desserts. So we see some really hilarious episodes in there where they give them a game that's like one version too old. It's like they're not the newest version. There's a little bit of disappointment. Then there's the one where Takashi-kun gets it's like the Precure ripoff.
Yeah, I feel like
for girls.
that would be fun as you guys who are parents, like seeing how you can disappoint your children. I feel like that might be kind of fun.
I mean, it's something that they get into later on when you've had a few more years to get better. But
Honestly, it's something you don't even have to plan most most of the time, Alex. It just sort of happens organically,
Okay.
in my experience.
Unless all your kids like is trains, then it's easy. But I was gonna ask: is there any present that stands out? And it doesn't have to be just yours, but it could be someone that you know, someone in your social circle, that you received like the most disappointing Christmas present ever. Jason, any experience like that?
I have two that come to mind. So, do you guys remember that? I guess it's a board game, but remember back before all children did was play video games? There were there were games that you would play, like physical
Before
games,
Y2K,
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And one of them was called Operation. Do you remember this game?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course.
I'm the doctor for you.
Okay, so exactly that commercial where they would like cut the dude open and pull out all this crazy stuff out of him.
Water on the knee. Yeah, that's some weird stuff.
So when I was a child, for whatever reason, this commercial like completely traumatized me. Like I hated it. I found it.
Oh my gosh.
I had this huge phobia of doctors and operations, like real life operations and stuff. So
Very valid.
Yeah, for some of us, that never goes away.
I mean, I think as far as phobias go, pretty respectable. But my uncle gave me the Operation board game, and I don't specifically remember. I remember being razzed about it for years afterward, opening the gift and just bursting into tears and like throwing it across the room.
Your parents knew. They knew your secret fears, and they just fed that to him.
So in retrospect,
Paralyzed.
this was probably my parents doing a little bit of Miharu, you know? Like, how can we... They hit 100 on that scale.
You must have been a naughty boy that year.
I don't know what I did. I guess they didn't want me to be afraid of operations anymore. I should mention my parents are both surgeons, so no, that's definitely 1,000% not true. They're the opposite of surgeons.
Double surgeons.
They're the opposite of surgeons.
Whatever that. They just
things
put stuff into people. Yeah, exactly.
You mean cooks?
Yes. Thank you. Good save. Thank you. The most disappointing gift was actually sort of around the same time. I was kind of roughly the same age. Whenever the TV show 90210 Beverly Hills was popular.
I was disappointed, yeah.
So we were having one of those Christmas get-togethers, and my parents' friends gave me like this beautifully wrapped present, and it was in this big box, and I was like, oh, cool, because I wasn't even expecting a present. I was like, what is this going to be?
Unexpected presents.
I'm like 7 or 8 years old. I open it up, and it's like a 90210 sweatshirt that's way too big for me.
Holy hell.
And I was like,
Thanks.
what?
Yeah.
I had never even seen the show before. I vaguely knew what it was. And I was so like befuddled by this gift that I actually remember my mom talking to her friend and like, was this the gift you meant to give Jason? Did you mix the gift up with someone else's gift? And
Is
it
this
was
a
like,
Christmas mix-up?
no, they just completely missed the mark on that one. So that was definitely the most, if you want to say disappointing, that was the most disappointing. I've still never seen an episode of 90210 to this day.
You'll never
I
have
hate
to.
it.
That would have turned you off. Alex, what about you? Is there any present that you got that just absolutely broke your heart?
See, that's the problem is because my dad's family was all in Italy. They never sent anything.
With the wishes.
They don't
can't
have
travel over
anything
water.
to give as
So
presents
the
in
only
Italy.
presents I got were really from my parents, and my mom is like a very pragmatic person. So she would always be like, what do you want? Pretty much.
No.
I would either get it or not get it, but it would be something I want. Or would be okay with. I'm also okay with like socks and underwear, even as a kid. If I got like like underwear
Very
with like
practical.
characters on it, I'm like, hey, that's cool. I now have My Little Ponies or something on my butt. So
Wow, you're like disappointment proof. That's a good way to live.
maybe because I'm one of the good ones. Maybe no, I don't know. What about you,
No.
Mark? I feel like this came from somewhere. This question might have come from something.
It did. There was an episode that I can remember. Gosh, I must have been about 10 or so. And my father, it was a present from my father. You know, someone who you would think would know you really well, inside and out, right? Like your mom and your
Your
dad.
father knows me very well.
He knows you very well. He's had you over to dinner multiple times, and he always cooks your favorite fried chicken. He just does a good job with the stuffing. I mean, he is
Stuffing
a
the fried
magician
chicken?
with that oven. Stuffing the fried chicken just makes the magic happen. But you would think that your mom and dad would be able to give you presents that, you know, bring a certain amount of joy as kids. They understand you as spending a lot of time with you and whatnot. And I don't know if I had done something to gaslight my father or just give him the wrong impression, but on this particular Christmas, in the 10th year of my life, I walked downstairs to the Christmas tree, and there were the presents, assorted gifts, boxes laid out before us for my brother, for my mother, my father, and then there were presents for cousins and whatnot as well, who couldn't be there at the time, but later we would give those gifts to them when we saw them next, perhaps at Grandma's house. And there was one present that was pretty big, and it was from my father. I was like, well, I should open this one. And we took turns, my brother and I, you know, one present at a time. But I was like, I am going to, this one's from Dad, it's going to be awesome. So I wanted to do this one. So, you know, in the past I had gotten like a Super Nintendo or like some really cool Lego stuff,
That's
like
good.
the kind of
Yeah.
the kind of toys that make you go wow, right? And on this
It even
particular
made me go wow right now just hearing about it.
yeah, I would take that Super Nintendo right now, any day. And then I open up this present, scoop it up, tearing up the wrapping paper, and inside were these two giant books filled with crossword puzzles.
Wait, how big was this box?
Such a shitty gift.
It was big. It was two giant,
Was this,
like hardwood.
was this
it was
on
like
purpose? Was this like a punked thing?
it was like the New York Times best does crossword puzzles, the best crossword
Wait, but
puzzle that you've ever
you're
had.
also 10.
And I was 10 years old, and I
Okay.
had just learned to read and write. And I remember,
So you're ready for the New York Times crossword.
well, I remember thinking, can my father, who is sitting right behind me, hear my heart break inside my chest?
Oh, no.
Because this is probably the most disappointing present, because he's had so many good ones in the past, and this is not at all something I was into. Maybe I'd said something to give him the wrong impression. I can remember one time we were at the beach and I was like, "Oh, let's get this book full of crossword puzzles," but there was some other stuff in it. It wasn't really about the crossword
Classic
puzzles.
beach activity. Completing crosswords.
That's my mom's. That's my
During
mom's
the
beach
process.
activity.
We love
Crossword puzzles and like murder novels. It's like-
Life's a little slower
Yeah.
there. But I remember thinking, and it kind of reminds me of what Miharu-kun did right here. I was like, I could, express my displeasure, as my 4-year-old son would do. I can imagine exactly how he'd do that. But, or I could, take one for the team. So I said, thank you, Dad. This is
And
exactly...
looking behind you on the Zoom call here, I can see that those two crossword books are still on your shelf.
Still how much I've never gotten around to
Still
doing it.
incomplete.
Still
Crisp
incomplete.
pages, never opened. Still in their shrink wrap.
There's no need to open them. I know what's inside.
You know what that sounds like to me, though?
No, what's that?
And this thought has probably crossed your mind, but I'm going to assume that Mark Sr. was at, Walmart or Target or whatever you have in Kentucky City, and it was late on December 24th, and he was like, shit, I still haven't purchased a gift for Mark.
Gotta get him something.
And he was just close to
gonna
the
be so
checkout.
it was like 2-for-1. Giant
It was like
crossword.
it was either that or like giant size O. Henry bar, and he's looking back and forth between them. He's like,
It's like, I know Mark like Butterfingers.
Yeah.
they didn't have any Butterfingers.
They don't have any Butterfingers.
Well, at least they weren't cryptics, were they? Have you ever seen those? Those things
No.
are brutal.
It was just straight up New York Times crossword puzzles. And I said, Dad, this is great. We can do these together. And he said, yes, son, we sure can. And then we never did.
Oh no! Promises broken.
Little hearts
Cats in
broken
the
that day.
cradle and the silver spoon.
And then the next year we switched to a new format for Christmas where Mom was like, look, we've got a budget and you kids will just like pick out what presents you want. And then it was all better after that. That's a new way to do it. Okay.
Well, they're like, yeah,
changed after the
you're
crossword
you're
Christmas.
11 now. You know how it works.
We're in the real world, and they made you sign the NDA, so you can't tell the other kids about Santa. But hey, back to the Black Knight Parade. Hikaru Nakamura is a very prolific author. She's done some series that we've already talked about. But I wanted to ask, did you notice any parallels in Black Knight Parade with any of her other works? I'm hinting at a few. I think we've hinted at some. Alex, what do you think?
So I think the most obvious one is the father thing of like living in a world with rules set by your father, like
Daddy
or
issues.
living in the shadow of your father, which makes me wonder if this mangaka has some beef with her dad, that he like set the house rules, or he has his own company or something where like she felt like she must be in his footsteps, but then instead of doing that, she gets kidnapped and is now in a zany world with like crazy characters surrounding her.
Do you think that part really happened to her as well? I mean,
I don't know, maybe. I mean, becoming a manga artist, I guess.
That's like being in a zany
That is
world.
becoming insane. And I'm sure no father would actually want you to become a comic book artist, maybe.
Or at least
I
not
would be
the
super
father.
excited if my kids decided on that as their future career, but
Different
Well,
strokes for different
yeah.
folks. Yeah, okay.
So, Alex, you've read a bunch of her previous work, have you?
Well, I really liked Arakawa Under the Bridge, which was like, it starts off with like elite businessman, and he's like, he's like, I'm never gonna be indebted to anyone, and then immediately gets indebted to somebody. So it's just like that kind of thing of like, and also the father had a company. And then in this one, the father is Santa. So, there's a lot of like living under your father's shadow, and your father is like this like big, this big thing that has a company.
Life, right?
Yeah, Santa's the big thing that has a company.
Yeah, I mean, it's
fair
his own
description.
Workshop up in the north.
I don't know. I feel like the most obvious parallel for me was Jesus and Buddha both appeared in this book.
Yeah, how many manga does that
almost
happen?
feels
right?
like intentional. You know, she's like, people really like that Jesus and Buddha book. What else can I do?
A little wink and a nod, especially at the end of volume
and that's
one,
the only other. And I've only read a little bit of Saint Onisan, Saint Young Man, and for me, unfortunately, the parallel here was that in the case of that book, Saint Young Man, and also this one, Black Knight Parade, I thought really, really cool concept, really intriguing idea that just it misses the mark for me. I never really enjoyed Saint Young Man as much as I thought I should be enjoying it based on the concept. Like Jesus
me too
and Buddha,
about that.
right? They're roommates. This is going to be amazing. How could you not make this extremely entertaining? And it just never was for me. And I felt the same way with this book. I was just like, amazing concept. This is going to be great. And I kept waiting for it to be great. And it was just like, like a couple of, a couple of little chuckles along the way. A couple like interesting ideas, but overall just kind of like.
A little ho-ho-ha.
A little ho-ho. Yeah. Just, so that for me was but obviously the Jesus and Buddha thing. I mean, come on.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that was very clear. Shino's backstory, amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
That part was great.
I still didn't understand why she can go from fat to skinny, though, and I kind of resented that one, but just because being a woman, just like, that's not how it works. You should know better.
Also, did she appear...
Sensei.
Was it just me, or did she seem really short as well at first?
Yeah,
like
she got like
she was like
chibi.
chibi.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on. That's what I mean about. I guess maybe it's a Nakamura sensei thing, but it's just like, I think she just has a very particular sense of humor that just does not match mine, maybe? Because that scene really annoyed me as well. I was like, what is this? Where's this coming from?
Yeah, that what annoyed me, but I like her other stuff, actually, so
her
other stuff hit, yeah.
Sometimes you have to ignore the laws of physics to really find your own.
Yeah, I'm very particular in my manga about following the laws of physics. Manga that do not do that always tend to rankle.
Which is why you like Uchu Kyodai so much.
Exactly.
So let's get in. We're trying to wrap this up now. We've been talking for an hour, on and on about Christmas, and there's only so much we can take. On a scale of a very Merry Christmas to ho 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 oh no, how would you rate this manga? Jason, we've already heard from you. Alex?
I would say a very zany Christmas because I don't know if I could go all the way to Merry. I think it's a really good read to pass the time, and like you don't have to think that much, and you get some laughs. It's not like it could go deeper and doesn't. Maybe that's why you're a little bit sad about it. I mean, the zaniness is like a lot of surface level stuff. I do like the little mysteries here and there, and like they're well connected. And because this mangaka is good at storytelling, like a lot of things connect to things, so it reads really smooth. So that's how I ended up at volume 3 and like immediately, and then life got in the way and I couldn't get to the end of the series. But I did feel like I could have gone to the end of 8 without thinking about it much, just because it's like it's a page turner.
It's definitely a fluid story. Jason, what about you? How would you rate it?
Call me Ebenezer Scrooge, if you will. Call me the Grinch. No, I mean, I'm not going to say that it was a lump of coal. I think, for me, this book was like, if you asked for a Nintendo 2DS for Christmas, and you're hoping for the blue one, and instead you got the pink one, you'd be super disappointed, right? As an elementary school aged boy. But I think for me, this manga, if I'm the elementary school aged boy and I ask for the blue Nintendo 2DS, this book is like, I got the gray Nintendo 2DS and the R button is a bit wobbly. That's what the... So, like...
Your mom picked up the used one.
Yeah, and she tried to pass it off as new, and I'm just like, I guess it functions well enough. It gets the job done. There are a couple of scenes that I really thought were strong. Like, actually, the Pearl Pink 2DS thing I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, that was funny.
Shino's backstory was quite good. And Boshi-san, Mr. Hat's line about... Well, of course Santa died. He was old and fat. What do you expect? So, like, every once in a while, there were these beats that made me want to keep going. But overall, yeah, it didn't really do much for me, unfortunately.
Okay. No, I think both of those are very fair assessments. But is there anyone that you would recommend this manga to?
Someone who knows Japan, as we discussed. I mean, I think somebody who likes, like, kind of zany type humor, slapstick a bit, too. And I'm sorry, that's all for me.
Yeah, I don't know. There's certain people who, around Christmas time, get really into just, like, watching... Like, I know people who will watch, like, one Christmas movie every day for the month of December, you know? Or they'll just, like, stay in during the holidays and just binge, you know, Christmas specials, right? So I think for that kind of person, there's probably a lot to enjoy here. Like, people who get...
The Christmas lover.
One thing, I can't believe we've gone this entire episode without even... mentioning it, but like I'm not a huge Christmas guy, never have been. So I can kind of take it or leave it. So that might have actually also influenced, you know, how I feel about the manga itself.
Got a little bit of Grinch in your heart.
A little bit. Back. My heart has grown 3 sizes during the recording of this podcast, however.
Does it warm your heart though, like Black Knight Parade, or does it just kind of make you question the whole?
I can't believe you guys didn't even
Christmas?
Bring up his mom. I loved his mom.
His
mom was so sweet, and oh my gosh, like she was so excited when he finally got a dog.
Yeah, like that just like unbridled pride in her son. It was like so cute.
I have to say, to be quite honest, and Mom, I hope you're listening to this. Miharu's mom actually quite reminded me of my mom. That's the kind of emails she always sends me, and I guess I'm quite fortunate to have such a mom.
The ones at the beginning where it's like, you know, it's okay. Everyone
She's
knows
like,
about
son,
your
I
job
know
situation.
you've worked at a konbini for 3 years. We all understand. You're still welcome home at Christmas time.
We just want to see you.
I very much relate to that, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Mom's the same. My mom would say the same thing to me. And I hope that everyone listening has a place where they can go home to this holiday season, or, you know, any season, wherever you are.
I mean, the holiday season ended.
February,
yeah, I know.
so.
So I'm like, the Chinese New Year. Okay, if this is February, Chinese New Year just ended. I hope you guys, I don't know, celebrated that as well as you could.
What's next? Well, Mark, what did you think? What was your overall takeaway?
Oh my gosh. So I wanted to pick something that was not like a giant Colossus series, because I mean, I find since starting this podcast with you two, my fellow Mangaroos, what I'm finding is that my tastes have been really, really mainstream, I think, for the most part. Apart from
normal.
That's normal, right?
That's why they call it mainstream.
Yeah, that's why they call it mainstream.
So, I mean, I definitely have a little bit of a gag manga penchant as well. Usta Kyosuke, like those kinds of artists, I've always had a soft spot for. But I wanted to kind of gravitate towards the gag or the humorous genre just a little bit more. But I wanted to do it with a volume that I'd never read. I wanted to experience something new for the first time together on the show, and Black Knight Parade was what I chose. And I probably will not finish this series. I'm good to go with Volume 1. I'm not rushing out to see the road show. But, I mean, it was entertaining enough. I think Nakamura Sensei has got a good thing going. She's building on her legend, and more power to her, and I wish her all the success in the world. But
absolutely.
It's probably not for me.
I'll let you know how it goes. I'm almost done with Volume 3. And Volume 4 wasn't at the book off, so I'll decide whether to continue or not after that.
There's always next Christmas, which brings us to the closing of this episode, episode 4 of Mangaroos, and on to the introduction of our next volume. Alex, what are we going to be reading next time?
So, yeah, Jason told me that it had been localized into English, so I wrote down the English title.
Oh,
The
it's a good
Ice Guy and His Cool Female Colleague.
Can't wait to read about Ice Guy.
Which is exactly, like, word for word, pretty much of the Japanese. Kori zokuse danshi to kurura douryo joshi by Miyuki Tonagaya. And it's one that's, I feel, is a bit different because, okay, so our theme was like snow, winter type things. So I thought of that one, even though maybe, I don't think it all takes place in winter, but it's about an office romance. And unlike the other stuff that we've read, it started off as a web comic. So I think that's something interesting to explore.
It's extremely popular right now. The
oh yeah, and the anime just started,
TV.
like, it just started this month.
Like, to the extent that it's hard to find Volume 1 in stores right now. So very timely selection. I'm looking forward to finding out whether it will warm our hearts or leave us cold. Remember, if you're listening to this, you can email us at mangaroospodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what you've thought about this episode. If you've been reading along with us, share your thoughts with us. We want to hear what you think of the manga we're reading. It's not just about what we think. It's about the community. You know, we're all in this together. So yeah, send your emails. We hope to start reading them soon on future episodes.
I am especially looking forward to recommendations. If you've got something that you'd like us to read or discuss on the air, drop us a line, and if it fits,
as long as it's appropriate.
As long as it's appropriate.
If it's appropriate.
Also, please don't recommend One Piece or Naruto, because
they're on the edge.
hoping to branch out a little bit.
Okay.
All right, and that's been it for episode 4. Thanks for sticking around with us and talking about Christmas. I hope that this episode has warmed your heart a little bit and made you think about what's really
It's always
important.
Christmas somewhere, is what they say, right?
If you include all the planets in the known universe, yes, it's always Christmas somewhere.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.